Okay,
Can I?
you
I
can, go ahead.
So. So in the past, I've seen some Facebook posts. And you were very angry about us giving away information.
Mhm.
So now we're open session and it's not us giving it away. You're gonna be
Yep.
talking about your business, correct?
Yes. Not so much about my business today.
Okay.
It's about other stuff regarding the industry. So,
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
yeah, of course. You ready?
You bet, go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon, Chairman McDonald and all of our tribal council. It's a pleasure to be able to meet with you all today, an honor as well. My name is Davin Sorrell. I'm representing Native Ventures LLC and Canna Lodge LLC. Both businesses are Indigenous owned and located within the Flathead Reservation. We are focused on ensuring the tribal community's equity in the new cannabis industry here on the Flathead Reservation and statewide. Our mission is providing a cannabis culture for the Flathead Reservation built on reciprocity with our tribal identity, our environment, and our community. I'm also here today as a CSKT tribal member. It has been instilled in myself and my generation about the importance to step up as leaders for our tribes. This message has been a motivation for myself and my peers to be outspoken, to become educated, to remain resilient, and to sacrifice for the betterment of others in our tribe. Native Ventures and Canna Lodge LLC has been the on-the-ground tribal stakeholder on the reservation. We are here to start the dialogue about what we are experiencing in the industry and how we can work together to ensure that the tribal community here has the upper hand in how legalized cannabis and the operations on the reservation are working in the benefit of CSKT and the tribal community. In our experience, there are a lot of issues involved in the current policy and industry, especially when holding the title as a Native American-owned marijuana business. We would like to work with the CSKT tribal government to assist in the creation of a program that establishes a better opportunity for our tribal community, as well as opportunities for tribal communities around the state. With the assistance of CSKT and with the unique opportunities that Native Ventures and Canna Lodge LLC hold, as on-the-ground tribal-owned businesses, we can push the conversation needed that tribes in Montana deserve. It is a priority in this discussion to acknowledge the establishment of non-tribal owned cannabis dispensaries that have opened on the Flathead Reservation since January 1st of this year. When legalization was implemented, it was then the responsibility of the tribes to respond and react to this change in policy, culture, and community. CSKT took a progressive approach to change some ordinances around the possession of cannabis for the tribal community. But because of the way the law is written regarding tribal communities, it is an uphill battle for tribes or tribal-owned businesses to enter the medical or legal markets. This is not because of tribes or their members don't have the know-how or understanding of the industry, but it's because the rules have been written against our tribal communities. It is our advocacy as Native Ventures and Canna Lodge LLCs and as CSKT tribal member stakeholders in the cannabis industry that we recognize and advocate against the discrimination that exists in the current legislation. We must recognize that even the 150 square mile restrictions that have been placed on the tribes limits tribes' access to urban centers, as well as restricts access to markets on their own homelands, more so for other tribes. It also creates competition between tribes in these designated areas. Why do non-tribal owners have all this access and the tribal community has to scramble to find pathways forward? This is not fair to Montana tribal nations and tribal businesses, and we need to advocate for a better option. In terms of revenue from taxation, 8.4% of each sale goes to a state tribal revenue sharing account. This funding is then split among each of the 8 tribes, allocating 1.05% in tax revenue to each tribe. It has further stipulations on how this funding will be spent. There are many red flags that appear with this arrangement. We believe the tribes should collect a majority of the taxation, especially within the borders of tribal reservations. We believe that just like the casinos, only tribal cannabis operations should exist within the border of the reservation. It is with these understandings that we would like to work with CSKT to find solutions that address these issues with the state and offer solutions we have been working on. Our businesses have been conducting the proper outreach and creating collaborations with other individuals working in the industry. These partnerships include a prominent cannabis lawyer in Montana, banks that provide services in the legal cannabis industry, resources for cannabis business operations, local tribal cannabis cultivators, and value-added processors, and relationships with other cannabis dispensaries and grow operations around the state. We have been working with other tribes around the country who have heard our message and have been providing resources to us to help in our advocacy. These resources include ordinances their tribes utilize to enter the cannabis market. It is important that we utilize the successes of other tribes. It is also important that we work together to create better solutions and not recreate the wheel. Being the on-the-ground tribal-owned cannabis business within the borders of the reservation, as well as being a voice in advocacy for tribal operations in the state, Native Ventures and Canalodge LLCs have a great understanding on how the CSKT Tribal Council and government can work with us to ensure a greater opportunity in the cannabis industry and provide for a better future for the Flathead Reservation. We would like to have a serious discussion about a partnership and in these endeavors. With respect to you, Tribal Council, we would like to enter into these discussions. Plum lunch.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
I think you know how I feel about marijuana.
Yeah.
Any discussion points? Like one thing we talked about, because everything's so new, and we may just say that your thought process is way ahead of ours, or collectively. So one of the ways that we can play catch up on, because you have a lot of relevant issues here that you just mentioned, that we would certainly, at least I would agree with. But it's almost like we need to, Jennifer suggested, set up a committee that would work on this, because you're talking about, maybe changing state law. And so that's a whole string of series of events and effort for that to happen. And some of the other items you have listed here. So to me, that's the best thing. Us creating some kind of arrangement would be to have your voice heard on a committee, and what research you've already done and expertise you've already developed to promote what you're talking about. That's the way I would look at it, David, right now. I don't know, any other council members have a suggestion? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Well, I don't have a suggestion, but yeah, in general, I'm highly in favor of committees because we have a lot of people in our community who have a really specific kind of expertise that not all of us have on tribal council. I'm not an expert on everything. And I just want to say thank you for coming in. You're very articulate and clearly you have done your research.
Thank you.
And thank you for that.
Yeah.
Carol?
Yeah, I know of a few individuals that are interested in doing the same thing, but not exactly what you're doing. And they feel like they have the backing or the ability to borrow money to be able to start. And so I asked them, well, why don't you just start? I mean, what's holding you up? And I kind of feel like they're kind of worried about the federal law thing and the tribe's position on, not our position, but just where we have to be because of federal law. I mean, we get a lot of grants. And so I encouraged them. And I think at one point I told you, why don't you just go get started? What are you waiting for? I mean, that building in Ronan, I thought would be perfect. It has drive-in on both sides. And so that's where I guess my question is, start.
Yeah. So to answer that, that is an approach that we've taken. We've tried to get off the ground and just go out on our own. Because of the way that the state bill is written, you can't apply, you actually can't apply or be approved for a license until after July 2023. Because of the new state bill, they're making it so that way all of the businesses that existed before November 2022 will have until that time to kind of go through the renewal process, expand their businesses, and it's to prevent, it's the state's way of preventing outside interest from having these out-of-staters move in, like Cookies out of California. That's a company that's multinational. They're in Europe, they're in the UK. They just opened a big lounge in Amsterdam. And then you've got Gage out of Michigan that's kind of just exploding all over the East Coast. And so that was kind of the state's way of making sure that these out-of-state interests can't just move into Montana. But what that did is that limited anybody else from Montana enter into the industry until after July 2023. The only way to get into an industry at this point is to, or until that time, is to purchase into another company, buy into another company, or have another company pull you in. What we're seeing right now is a lot of outside interest, a lot of outside of, or, you know, these bigger companies, they're finding residents in the state to put the business in their name, so they can bypass that process of having to wait until 2023, 2024. And so if anybody gets into the industry like new, it's because they joined in on one of these companies. And there's a lot of conflict with that. For example, let's say the tribes, you found a business in Montana, a prominent business that you were like, hey, let's go into partnership with this company. They're established. Let's say you wanted to do that. Because you were not the original owner on that license, if that company were to ever to sell out and take their names off that license, everything you would have built with them will be reverted to a tier 1 canopy. So that means you could have gone from a 40,000 square foot facility with 10 different locations. And if that person sells out or just like, I don't want to work with the tribes anymore, then everything you've built and developed will drop from a 40,000 square foot facility in 10 locations to a tier 1 canopy, which only allows 500 square feet up to 1,000 square feet of cultivation with 1 location. And so that's, you know, that all kind of ties in with the problems with this 150 sky mile radius. If you guys don't mind, I'd like to get up and actually show you this map that shows the access that each tribe has to the state. And it's pretty, to me, I find it horrifying because of where we're located. More than half of our 150 sky mile radius actually sits in Washington, Idaho, and Canada. So we don't even have a true 150 mile radius around us for that joint license. Blackfeet tribe, they're located in Great Falls. So they've got access pretty much to everything in Montana. And then you've got Fort Belknap, the same situation. They're up in a corner. They don't have access to the entire state. And so it's really limiting to the tribe's potential or tribal entities that are trying to get into the business to being able to access the entire market. And that's just not fair. You know, I mean, anybody else from the state that's been in the industry since 2020, they're, you know, tier 5 or higher, they've got multiple shops. So all these businesses you're seeing here on the res, they all were licensed before November 2020. Alternative Relief out of Polson, they're originally out of Libby. They've got shops all over Montana. So that's kind of what we're seeing, is this influx of people who have the money, who have the licenses, and they're looking at our reservation, specifically Polson, as a huge opportunity for them to bring in a bunch of revenue off of tribal tourism or tourism in the tribal community. And so that is also a concern.
Can I have follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead,
So,
Carol.
Mike, what is your response to that? Is that currently in the legislation? Is it proposed legislation? And I know we'll be lobbying in the next legislature. So what's your response to?
Well, I'm not in agreement with Davin's assessment for a couple of reasons. The state law doesn't touch on reservation operations. It's silent. So arguably, we don't have to do anything the state says. The best advice is to adhere to state requirements to keep the feds off your back. When you're talking about the shops that are on the reservation, we can't simply treat them like gambling and exclude them because there's fee land on the reservation and it's a state law that applies to those fee lands. So I don't agree with that prospect either. As far as the off-reservation license, there are restrictions on that because that's off reservation. That's fee land off the reservation. So the state is saying, look, I don't know what the thought process behind that carve out was, but I think it had to do with, we're not touching the reservation stuff because we have no ability to. So we'll do this as a reach out to the tribes. And as far as the geographical limits, I mean, you can go in any direction in Montana and run into nothing. So, you know, a lot of these 150 mile radiuses, they're not going to run into any people no matter where you are. I mean, I agree with Davin that, yeah, there's a border there and that cuts off some of the 150 miles, but there's mountains and different geological or geographical barriers or emptiness out there that impact the 150 mile radius for everybody. So that's my assessment of some of the statements that I've heard.
So Mike, one question related to the land status off the reservation. If it was in trust off the reservation, then the state wouldn't have any say in it.
I think that would insulate us from the state rules to an extent, but then we're getting into the federal trust responsibilities and what that implicates with the feds. And our conversations with the BIA is they're concerned about their trust responsibility, and marijuana isn't in that responsibility. And that was basically their line in the sand. They're not giving any advice on marijuana or any cover.
In regards to limiting the number of non-member owned vendors on the reservation, one potential solution would be to enter into some type of a compact with the state to limit that.
So I'm not sure what the prospects for limiting participation in medical or marijuana, recreational or medical. Most of our compacts have to do with, taxation from tribal members on the reservation. And that's, as you're aware, we just recently met with the state on that and proposed some agreement with them. But yeah, in terms of what we could do to limit participation, my initial thoughts would be some kind of zoning ordinances, things like that. I don't know what we can do to limit a lawful business on the reservation on fee lands. Not really sure. I'm not prepared for that specific situation.
Go ahead, Nita.
So Gavin, I don't know, this is all new to me as well. What about the other tribes? What are they trying to do?
So from our conversations with other tribes, at least in Montana, I can say that some tribes are completely opting out. They're just like, this is too big of a risk. We don't want to look into it. Crow tribe is an example of one of those tribes, but recently in the last few months, there's been another kind of grassroots effort, kind of like ourselves, for the Crow tribe, who have been making some pushes there. We know Blackfeet tribe is kind of considering it and looking into their possibilities. Outside of Montana, we've seen tribes in Washington who are compact tribes. We see that they, are doing everything in their power to prevent the markets from being saturated by non-tribal businesses on their reservation. There's the Southern Paiute tribe in Vegas. They created a compact with the state of Nevada before it even legalized there. And so when legalization passed, Colville, the Southern Paiute tribe, they were already in the process of cultivating and setting up a dispensary. So that's why down in Vegas now they've got, I think it's called Uwu, the big dispo that they have. That's how they were able to get that done. But that was through a compact that they pushed with the state before it happened. I know compacts are a lot of work and it can take a lot of time and money, but I personally believe that this industry is worth that. Especially when you look at the potential it has, especially for companies like Cookies and Gage being able to enter into international markets. I mean, that goes from making a couple $100,000 a year on a business to making millions of dollars. And I mean, if you could just imagine what that could do for our tribe, our membership, that would elevate us to a point where we would have financial capital that isn't tied to the federal government. And by using a business like ourselves, we would be able to access that and make changes that you wouldn't have to necessarily be so worried about what the federal government is thinking. It's your money, and I think that's one of the biggest things that tribes can do to increase their sovereign status and their own self-empowerment, is to start looking at economic ways of creating their own money, and not solely focusing on other people's successes or grants, things like that. But there's a lot of potential in this industry. And I came here in 2013 for the first time, and I told council at that point, this is going to happen in less than 10 years. And so here we are today, and we're still kind of behind. And I would just like to see council take a progressive step and utilize us, use us as a resource, use us as a company that is passionate about this industry, wants to see change and truly wants to see it benefit our community. We're not just looking to fill our pockets. There's a lot more that can be done with this to help our community, to help our reservations than just providing cannabis and money. And I think we have those solutions, so.
And Chairman, another piece that I said to Councilwoman Langford and a piece that Davin had touched on, I want to clarify on that. Davin's right. There is a grace period until the date he cited to allow local businesses to maximize that time to grow and establish themselves. So it would be a situation where you partner with someone with an existing license, but on the reservation where arguably the state law doesn't apply. If you're willing to take the risk, there's nothing stopping you.
Well, Davin, I appreciate you coming in today. I know that I didn't know the full breadth of the state law then when it was enacted in the opportunity the tribes have within the 150-mile radius, which I thought that was, it's not right, as you said, as far as fair, but I thought that was interesting that they even provided that. And I thought that was an interesting opportunity because tribes didn't have to wait a whole year. They could have opened up dispensaries and grow operations within that radius under the law and got ahead of everybody by at least a whole calendar year. And in business, that, when you capture the market, that's an important thing. It allows you quite a bit of an advantage in any business opportunity. So it was unfortunate that at that point in time, it was still an illegal activity under tribal code. So our own tribal regulations prohibited recreational use of marijuana. So, and of course, medical marijuana. So we're just catching up to that stuff. And, I think that I would love to see us have a committee study this and look at ways we can improve it and maximize it to our benefit, because this is an economic opportunity for us. And we have a land base. We have a really extremely talented people. We have opportunity to do, hydroponics and utilizing our geothermal resources for whatever grow operations we might want. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for us. And in a medical sense, it's such a relief that we have this opportunity to use it that way. Also, probably even more important than anything else. But I agree with you that I could see other businesses looking at the tourism traffic, the millions of people coming through here in the summertime, the growth of the northwestern Montana in particular, on how they would want to expand and proliferate, have a lot more businesses in the especially around Flathead Lake, Polson area. I agree with you. I think that's probably going to happen. So there is an opportunity. I certainly would like to look at this as an economic development opportunity for our membership. And I think I rather like to see individual members do this. I believe that that's the best product can be provided through individual insight and opportunity and competition. And competition drives down prices for consumers. And so I think that I wouldn't ever try to create a monopoly just for a handful of tribal businesses, but I would want it always open for fair competition for all our members to be able to proceed in it. So any other comments from council? Yeah, go ahead, Evan.
So just to touch on one thing, Mike was talking about, the compact and how we can't just shut down these other dispensaries. I would just like to say that we believe that we have solutions to being able to get the upper hand in the industry without even having to press a compact. By being able to utilize the joint license, maybe even applying for a separate state license, as and that's why we think this partnership is extremely important, because half of the potential would come from the tribe, and then the other half would come from being a private business. And having this relationship, I think, could separate us from just falling under that joint license and what the state allows for tribes, and being able to kind of expand into those other markets and increase potential. Yeah.
Go ahead, Carol.
I guess that's one mechanism I've never really seen the tribe do, is basically get into business with somebody, usually the government, when they feel that we can do the job, we start our own business, because then that represents the membership as a whole. And so as you see, our corporations that we have, they're all set up and they all answer to the council, but I don't recall, maybe I'm mistaken, maybe there's a lot of them, but I don't recall that we enter into a business venture like this with an individual. What we do is we allow you the opportunity to borrow at tribal credit. We provide those mechanisms, or go through the money that the Stead Commission gives out, and make sure that, you know, things are in order, like business plans, and that you have the proper collateral and all that kind of stuff to get up and go. But maybe that's the issue here, and maybe we should figure out a way that isn't an obstacle for you, because you're young, and most people at your age, you know, I'm not trying to criticize that you don't have you don't own a home and no debt on it or anything, and so it's hard to collateralize anything unless your grandparents left you some land or something. And so maybe that is really your obstacle here, that we could figure out a way to help you get up and go and be your own business without a partnership. And then when the tribes decide to get up and go, then you're just under the umbrella, not under the umbrella, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just part of us.
Yeah.
And then you're earning the money that you deserve because of all the effort you put into it. And then the tribes will foresee what comes out of it in their arena. Am I making sense? I mean,
No, definitely. That's one thing we've thought about a lot is, looking at the history of the tribe, we haven't seen this kind of partnership ever. And so we kind of thought, if this were to ever happen, it would be a very progressive approach from council. But we also know that there's other possibilities of this, right? So one thing we've ran into is finding funding is very difficult, because in our operating agreements, everything that has created the foundation of our business states that we are going to get into the marijuana industry. And that's something that you have to do to kind of, CYA, cover yourself. And when banks see that, they're almost immediately like, nope, can't do it. And if it's not that, then it's the fact that we're a tribal business on a reservation. That's a risk factor. We found the one bank that's willing to work with us, they charge $3,500 a month for banking fees, but because we're a native-owned business, they're going to allow us to bank with them for free until we become profitable, and then they'll only charge us $500 a month at that point. And those are the kind of relationships that we've been developing with people across, not just in Montana, but in the United States. I mean, this bank's out of Arkansas. But they've got relationships with money transport services, all kinds of things. So that way they would, they come get your money and then they bring it to the state treasury where it gets counted and put into an account. And so, the other issue that we run into is banks are like, oh, hey, yeah, we'll throw you $200,000, but you've got 2 years to pay it off. And if you don't pay it off within 2 years, then your assets become ours. And so that's a big concern for us, because that kind of goes right back to the housing crisis of 2008, where banks were just giving people money to buy homes that they could never afford, which led to homelessness and all these other problems. And so that's a huge risk factor for us, seeing that money's out there. And then, we've got all these outside interests who want to invest, who want to get in, but their motives aren't the same. They don't line up with us being here for the tribe. They see it as an opportunity to fill their pockets, rather than actually contributing something good. And so that's part of why we haven't jumped into any other businesses. That's why we haven't accepted money from certain people. At the end of the day, that's why we're really hoping we can rely on council and work something out with you guys, because it's a very cutthroat industry. And I would rather take my chances and with you guys providing you all of my assets, all of my resources, my knowledge, my intellectual property, everything, than to provide that to somebody else who doesn't genuinely care about the tribe or the tribal membership. And so, Carol, you brought up how, my Facebook posts and stuff. And, that is something I want to apologize for, and I am sorry for that. I do have a lot of passion for this, and I've had conversations with all of you outside of council, most of you. And I appreciate all of you. I genuinely enjoyed the conversations that we've had. It's given me some direction, and it's also sparked more motivation or drive in myself to do this for our membership. Like I said, I believe our company, we've created the foundation. And so, back to, how would we get into this? We're open to looking at that. We've created the foundation. Like, you guys can just talk to us. Let's figure it out. We've got the ground structure figured out, and we just really need to get the license and get going. And so we're really hoping we can.
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
So one follow-up, and it just needs to be answered in one word. How much?
How much money?
Ululim.
Ulilim. That's really dependent on how we go about this. So there's a more you can take a horizontal integration approach where you set up a shop, use this joint license, and we would utilize our connections with other cultivators in Montana to put product on the shelf without having to grow our own. That would be the cheapest way forward, because then we can set up distribution locations, utilize these wholesale contracts, our connections that we have, to immediately get into the industry and then work towards a cultivation facility. That, you start out at a tier 1, you're looking at maybe $1,200, $1,400 a month just for your lease or your rent on your facility. We could probably get through a full year with like $50,000, $55,000 with that. But that's also dependent on that joint license. If we were to have the joint license, we could do it. If not, we have to wait until July of next year. But just to even get started, we wouldn't need a whole lot. It'd basically be covering the cost of our the state fee for our provider license. And then the fee per location, it's another $500 per location. And then just being able to, get our wholesale product. And we've worked out things with these cultivators. So they're basically going to loan the product to us. We'll distribute it, sell it, and then, start paying that off that way. Kind of financing. Everything we've done is we've tried to find the cheapest, most effective method of getting into the industry, and then kind of like the high end of, this would be the dream. The dream would take probably about $300,000, and that would be able to build a facility that can expand into a tier 5 canopy. Because after that first year, you would have an opportunity for renewal, and the state changed the law, or the Department of Revenue. They reinterpreted the bill so that way businesses that are tier 1 can expand into a tier 5 canopy after 1 year, rather than having to go year to year.
Well, there is a guy in the back of the room that tells us not to say yes to everything. So I think, Mr. Chair, I think it's a good idea if council has a discussion about this, a serious one, and talk about what he's, I guess, not necessarily proposing, but what we can do to help him get off the ground. I mean, we have the ability to do that, but then that means that opens the door to 8,000 other members to be able to come in and say, you know what, I got a business and you don't want to go in a partnership. So we do sometimes need to learn to say no, but I think there's an opportunity, a unique opportunity on a product that's well used and helpful to people. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, even grandmas, that appreciate to have this stuff to be able to take care of their cancers or whatever else, their depression, whatever else they're going through. So, I don't think it hurts the council to have that discussion to see how we can help somebody maybe get to the first step and then see where you can go from there.
Yeah.
That's it. Mr. Chair.
Real quick, just to kind of touch on that. So one thing that we would like to do, and kind of our goal, is to be able to provide these products to the membership at a reasonable cost. When the state passed their tax, the 20% tax, and counties are adding their additional tax, what these dispensaries are actually doing is they're putting the tax on the customer. They're not paying the tax themselves. So they've jumped the prices on their product up by 25, 30%, and that's how they're paying off their taxes. This bottle of water here is just a CBD infused bottle of water, and it costs $4. Wouldn't buy it on any other day, but I intended on kind of using this for my presentation today. These are the kind of products that we would like to be able to bring to the tribal community, but at a reasonable cost. There's no reason that CBD, being something that is so beneficial for you, should empty your pockets, and especially for a tribal community that already on average kind of lives in that lower end of, financial equity. And I just think it makes sense for us to be able to, like I said, work together and find a way to be able to do this for the community. So that's that.
More thing, Mr. Chair, I buy a bottle of CBD probably about every month and a half, and it cost me $67, and it would actually be 90 if I wasn't in this other little thing that I joined. And so, and it's so helpful. I mean, somebody asked me, can I have some of your CBD? And I'm like, oh, they're gonna think I'm selling pills or something.
Yeah.
But it helps with pain, and it helps the aches and stuff, and it's just unbelievable how much it works.
Yeah, it is a huge, I don't know how to say this. I guess it's a holistic approach that has far less consequences than Western medicine. CBD has been found to alleviate most things that NSAIDs do, like your non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, so ibuprofen, Tylenol, things like that. Those are pills that people take every day, and people actually die because of them. Their liver, their kidneys, things fail out on them. CBD doesn't do that. Right there, I think that alone is just, to me, it's amazing. And there's no reason that, we should be looking at it, at least taking it seriously and thinking about what at least the pharmaceutical side of it can do for our people, especially with our current opiate and alcoholism addictions and things like that. So
I'm gonna do another public, just like Carol. CBD, yeah, in my briefcase over there, I got acetaminophen, ibuprofen, aspirin, and my CBD. And indeed, if it wasn't for my ability to access it, my liver would be shot right now. I'm in constant pain. And so, yeah, I attest to it. It's very valuable, and it's an alternative that's healthier for people. Go ahead, Ellie.
I just want to thank you for coming in today, Davin. Very articulate, like Jennifer said, you've obviously done your homework. And I just really trust that what you're speaking about, that it's evident. And my hope would be that we could continue the conversations with you. I do think it's important for us. I mean, we keep talking about supporting tribal member entrepreneurs, and we have this amazing opportunity. And so I do hope we can continue the conversations and find out what it is. And maybe it's not the partnership, but maybe it's helping identify the funding or the location or something. But I do hope that this council will consider future conversations with you. And thank you.
yeah, of course. Really quick though, when you asked, how much we would need, I don't actually have all that in front of me, so I was just kind of trying to go off of my memory. But yeah, of course. Is that everything? Yeah. All right.
Just one thing, I have your phone number, so I may know some individual investors that would.
What was that?
I may know some individual investors that would be
Okay.
interested in your supporting you.
Perfect. Thank
I'll
you.
talk to them.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. All right. You all have a good day, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Davin.
Oh. Mike, did you have anything else for us?
No, unless there's any follow-up questions. I think some of the things that I heard from Davin that needed clarity, I gave my opinion on those. But yeah, other than that, I mean, we've been consistent when we've talked to Davin. We applaud his vision and his initiative, but we always tell him, we're not here to stand in your way, but we can't offer you any help at this time, and good luck to you. And, you know, that's a message that that stands. We want him to do well, but, you know, we've always told him also to hire good legal counsel, and apparently he's got somebody, so I'm glad he's got somebody.
Thank you, Mike. I would just offer to the tribal council that we would take this subject matter up at the next chairs meeting or the following chairs meeting, so we don't lose any time on this. Okay, thank you. Last on our agenda today is Rick. We can adjourn? Okay, we can adjourn. Motion by Carol to adjourn. We are adjourned.